If you've been trying to manifest a certain reality that you desire, but you feel blocked from manifesting or reaching that next level because you feel so much resistance towards that desired reality, whether that's you struggling to have faith in that desired reality or you struggling to feel and do the things that your desired self would be doing every single day, it's likely because your ego is blocking your manifestation from coming to you easily. Now, the thing that I want you to understand before we get into the rest of this video is that we don't want to get rid of the ego in this video. We don't want to have an ego death like most of the people in this spiritual community talk about. Because the ego is an aspect of you that is required to experience your desired reality. And so what we want to do instead is for you to have control over the ego rather than the ego having control over you. So in this video, I'm going to explain why this happens to you and how your ego actually blocks your manifestation. And then I'm going to give you some techniques and a method to counteract the ego from actually blocking your manifestations so that all this resistance and the blocks that you've been feeling just fall away and you stop feeling the resistance. And then you can finally move out of your old reality or current reality and into a reality that you actually choose to experience. And this is the very first thing that I teach to my clients in my private community, because becoming aware of and gaining control of the ego is the foundation of manifestation. If you do not have this foundation, then you will never be able to choose the reality that you experience. You will always be led to experience an undesired reality because that's what your ego is influencing you to create. So why does it feel like your ego is constantly blocking your manifestation? Well, you probably feel like no matter how hard you try to affirm or visualize your desired reality or take action to contribute to your desired reality, that you still feel triggered by circumstances in your physical reality. You still feel that same doubt creeping in. You still feel the same twinge of your desired reality not being possible for you, or that you're unworthy of having your desired reality. And so you do all the right things in the morning and you feel good for an hour or two, but then throughout the day, you feel like you slip back into the old self. You slip unconsciously into living as the ego rather than as your higher self. Now, the reason this is happening to you is because you're identified with the ego instead of just being aware of it. And your identification with the ego is what is causing you to block your own manifestation. And this can either be caused by you being unaware of your true self as the awareness, or maybe you are aware that you are the awareness, but you're struggling to maintain your state of being the awareness in order to decide what state you want to embody to be your desired self. And so the first thing I'm going to explain to you is what the ego actually is, because you need that foundational understanding in order to then become aware of the blind spots of how your ego may be blocking your manifestation. So what is the ego? Well, you can conceptualize the ego as your persona in this physical reality. And this persona is essentially an amalgamation of everything that you have experienced and your ego has experienced in this physical reality, right? And that includes every single success, every failure, everything your ego has been taught, every conclusion that you have come to based on your observations of other people's experiences or what they've told you about their own experiences. And so your ego, your persona, is conditioned by physical reality. And so you can look at the ego as a child of physical reality because it looks to physical reality as its parent. It's always asking physical reality, how should I think? How should I move? How should I act? How should I feel? How should I live? Right? The exact same way that you did to your parents as a child. And so physical reality teaches your ego how to do those things, exactly how to live, and your ego just follows, right? But the issue is, if your physical reality isn't reflective of the reality that you actually desire, then you're going to have a problem when you want to feel a different reality within, because your ego is going to be experiencing and seeing lack. And because you're identified with your ego, then you are also going to feel lack, which is not what you want to be feeling. And so you can conceptualize your persona, your ego, as this character in this physical reality, right? And this character consists of your name, let's say your name is Bob, right? Your story, everything you have experienced up until this point. And then your character is just, well, this is my story, so this is who I am. This is what I have in physical reality. This is me. And so if your character has never experienced having or running a successful business, but an aspect of your desired reality is to have a successful 10K a month business, then your ego is never going to feel capable of having that desired reality, of having that 10K a month business. It's not going to think it is possible for you. And so your ego is like this character that you play in this game of life, that you play in this physical reality, that other people see in this physical reality, right? But if you identify with the ego, then you're identifying with the character. And when you identify with the character, you're also identifying with that character's level and that character's perceived limits. So let's say, for example, there's Bob, and Bob has a 9-to-5 job, but he also has a side hustle that he's been struggling to grow for years. But he eventually wants that side hustle to grow and become successful enough to become his full-time business, so he can finally quit his job. But Bob is identified with his character in this physical reality. And his character in this physical reality, all it knows is, well, I've never had a successful business before. My whole life, I was raised to just get a university degree and work a job until I retire and just settle for what is normal. And because Bob is identified with his character, he cannot create anything outside of what that character knows to create, which is why he struggles to have a successful business outside of his 9-to-5 job, because the 9-to-5 job is all he knows to be true about himself. So if you identify with the ego, you identify with the character, then you also inherit the level and the perceived limits of that character. And that becomes the level and the limits of your reality, right? And so if you believe yourself to be stuck at level 1, then in your actual life, in your reality, you are going to experience being stuck at level 1, because you and your reality are one. There is no separation between you and your reality. And so your character can only create what it believes to be true about itself, which is exactly why we talk so much about self-concept, how you see yourself in the world. So if you want to create a different reality that you desire instead, you have to detach from the current version of yourself. And in order to detach from the current version of yourself, that means you need to release identification from the ego. You need to release identification from the character and understand that you are just the player of that character. And we're gonna get to that in a second. But for me, a few years back, I decided to make music to post on Spotify. And I had never done it before. And so I set a goal to go from 0 to 100,000 streams on Spotify in a single year, right? And at the time and before that, all I believed was that making music and being a successful artist was just for big artists with huge teams, big official studios, and members of the team that can handle marketing, handle the music production, publishing, all that type of stuff. But at some point, I just decided I'm just gonna do it despite the resistance that I'm feeling. And when I decided to just do it and choose to embody the version of myself that I wanted to be, despite all the factors going against me, I passed that goal. I had over 100,000 streams with 3 to 4 months left to spare. And I thought that goal was going to be impossible before I actually started it. And so you got to think to yourself, how many times have you wanted to do something, you've wanted to pursue something, but you've also thought to yourself, oh, I'm not the type of person who does that. Doing that type of thing is only for people who have rich parents who can be their fallback if it fails. And then you proceeded to avoid doing it, even when doing the thing would bring you so much happiness, so much joy, so much fulfillment. And if it were to actually work out, your life would be exactly how you wanted it to. So why is the ego this way? What is the reason that the ego creates so much negativity in your life? Well, that's because the ego's primary function is self-preservation. It just wants to keep you alive. It just wants to keep you safe. But in order for it to do that, it needs to, whatever it experiences in physical reality, it needs to look for the negative aspects of those things. Always look for the potential threats. So that means anything that is unfamiliar to your ego, it is going to perceive as dangerous, right? But that also means that anything outside of your current reality, it is also going to perceive as dangerous. And that includes your desired reality. So your ego thinks negatively. Your ego thinks negatively about your desired reality. And that's exactly why you feel so much fear around having it. You feel so much anxiety around having it, so much worry. And so if making your business successful requires you to create content for it to help grow the business. But your ego is looking to the negative aspect or the potential threat of, well, what if I post the video and it does terribly and then my friends see and then they think I'm crazy for what I'm talking about, or they think I'm weird. Your ego perceives that as unsafe. And so whenever you actually go to create content, you never feel safe doing it. And if having your desired reality requires you to consistently create content, then you're never going to feel safe having that desired reality, which is exactly why you don't have it. Because your ego doesn't want you to have it because it perceives it as dangerous. And you're identifying with that ego. And so you're allowing it to block your manifestation, block you from receiving it. And so your ego has created all these old beliefs and associated emotions that have been triggered by the ego's reactions to circumstances in physical reality, right? And these emotions and these beliefs are stuck within your subconscious mind. It's stuck within your mind and your body. And they're continuing to cause you to feel resistance and blocking your manifestation because these beliefs and emotions don't serve you at all when it comes to you creating your desired reality. And that's exactly why you need to let go of them. And the only way to let go of them is to be able to release identification from the ego, detach from the ego, so that you can actually find a space of safety. If you think about when you watch a movie in the theater, couldn't you imagine if you thought you were the character in all the drama and crazy stuff that's happening in the movie? Of course you're going to feel unsafe. But because you recognize yourself to just be the one watching the character in the movie and that you are safe in the theater, then you feel completely safe, right? And so you got to remember, your ego just wants to keep you safe. That's all it wants for you. And so as I said before, we don't want to have an ego death. We don't want to get rid of our ego because we need the ego to experience this reality. And so what we want to do instead is have the ego submit to you rather than you submit to the ego. And once you can do that, then all the blocks that you're feeling towards your manifestation completely fall away. You stop feeling the resistance, and that's what we want. So in order to have conscious control of all aspects of yourself, and that includes the ego, to then be able to have control of your reality, what you need to do is shift from living as the ego to living as the higher self by observing your ego objectively. So essentially what this means is you shift from identifying with the character to identifying with the player of the character. And the player of the character is your true nature. You likely have just forgotten that, right? You are the soul, you are the higher self, you are the awareness that is inhabiting and animating your mind and body to have this physical experience, right? You are not actually your mind, you are not actually your body. You are the awareness that is observing them and its experience of this reality. And we know yourself to not be the body and mind because you can observe them. And if you can observe something, then you cannot be that thing, right? And so when I hear most people talk in conversations, it's always an exchange of, oh, what is your persona doing compared to what is your persona doing? They're always exchanging what accolades they have, how much status they have, how much money their character has acquired. But when I try to talk to people, I try to talk to the soul that is within the body. I try to look past the eyes, past the persona, and actually talk to how they truly are within their body. And I know that might sound odd to you, but that is their true nature. That is your true nature. And so when I try to talk to you, I'm not going to talk to you, your persona and how much you've achieved. I'm going to talk to the true self that is within you. That's what I'm going to try to connect with. And so once you recognize yourself as the player, as the awareness controlling the character, you're going to start to see all the possibilities of the experiences that your character can have in this life. And it's actually going to feel achievable now. And then you're also going to be able to see ways to up-level your character that you couldn't see before, or you couldn't notice, because your ego was constantly perceiving those things as dangerous because it was outside of its current level. And so as you move towards living as the awareness, living as the higher self, and choosing to embody your desired state, resistance is going to come up, right? That is just going to happen because you haven't let go of the old beliefs and the emotions that are still stuck within your subconscious. But what's going to happen is when that resistance comes up, because you're now operating from the awareness, you're going to perceive that resistance in a new light. And it's not going to have the same control over you or stop you from doing the things that you want to do. Because the resistance, when recognized rather than identified with, actually gives you the answer to exactly which beliefs and emotions that you need to let go of. And once you let go of these things, you don't feel the same resistance anymore. You don't feel those blocks. And so you stop blocking your manifestation. And then you actually feel to be your desired state. And then you actually materialize your desired reality. So now I'm going to give you the method to consciously control the ego and finally let go of the resistance that your ego has created. And so the first thing you want to do is gain the ability to observe your ego objectively. And this is the foundation to being able to recognize resistance and aspects of the ego rather than identifying with them. And so the way you want to build this ability is through meditation. And in this meditation, we're not going to visualize your desired reality. All we want to do in this meditation is familiarize yourself as the awareness. Feel what it feels like to be the awareness and familiarize yourself with that feeling so that you can then carry it throughout your day. And so what you're going to do in this meditation is just sit down or lie down, take some deep breaths to relax your body, and then just allow thoughts and allow emotions, which are just bodily sensations, to come up without judgment and then allow them to pass. And so you want to do this meditation at least once a day. And I highly recommend doing this first thing in the morning before you do anything else in your day. And that sets up the frequency that you embody for the rest of your day. And you want to perform this meditation each session for at least 10 minutes, 15 minutes plus if you can, because it deepens that connection to the awareness. If you only do 5 minutes, it's very surface level. You don't really fully get that connection. But if you can, I highly recommend doing 2 to 3 times a day, right? That's 1 in the morning, 1 before you go to bed at night, and 1 in the middle of the day if you can find a quiet space and some time to meditate. Because it wraps your day in the frequency that you want to embody, right? As I said before, it's very easy to set yourself up in the frequency you want to embody in the morning, and then an hour later, you slip back into the unconscious, right? Slip unconsciously back into your ego. You slip back into the old self. And because you're operating from your old self or your undesired self throughout most of the day, that is what you end up creating. You end up creating, excuse me, you end up creating an undesired reality. And that's what we don't want. So at a minimum, do this meditation once a day, first thing in the morning, for at least 10 to 15 minutes. So once you familiarize yourself with what it feels like to be the awareness rather than the ego, then you can move on to step 2, which is throughout each day, you want to maintain this awareness and observe your ego objectively. So throughout the day, whenever you're attempting to shift into and maintain your desired state and you're feeling and doing the things that are reflective of your desired reality, you are going to feel resistance come up. But through your state of awareness, you want to recognize that resistance rather than identify with it. And so what you're going to do is take note of the resistance, right? What is the belief that I have about the situation that is causing me to feel this resistance? So for example, if you were about to create content and you felt this feeling of not being good enough to talk about what you want to talk about, and it's causing you to procrastinate doing it or causing you to feel anxious about doing it, then you're going to write down that belief and that resistance. Write down the feeling of not being good enough, right? And that's going to come handy in step 3. But the reason that you want to take note and you want to write it down is because you get to see the resistance objectively. And then what happens is when you can see it on paper, when you can see it on your phone, you increase the separation between you and that aspect of yourself. And you stop looking at it as a burden or something dangerous that you have within. And it just becomes something to release. And then in order to execute the task that you wanted to do in the state that you wanted to do it in, you want to allow the resistance to be there while you do the thing as your higher self. So instead of suppressing that anxious feeling that comes up, the resistance that comes up, lean into the feeling, like surrender into it. Feel what the sensation in your body feels like. And then just do the task. And then as you do the task, the resistance will just fall away. It'll feel like it just spreads throughout the rest of your body and stops feeling like some concentrated energy in a certain part of your body. And so the resistance is likely to just fall away as you're doing the task, because you just start to learn that, oh, well, this old belief that I have didn't even stop me from doing it. And so your belief about the situation or what you were trying to do changes. And you feel that resistance less and less every single time you do the task. And so the purpose of this step was to, 1, gain control of the ego and have the ego submit to you, which means whenever you feel the resistance, your ego goes, we don't want to do that. And as your higher self, you go, we are doing it. And then the second thing that you get from this step is that you identify and you recognize the resistance that you've been feeling, and you've noted those things down on a list. And that's what you're going to use in step 3. And what you're going to do in step 3 is let go of the aspect that is causing the resistance by allowing it to finish its cycle. And so you're going to go to that list that you created from step 2, which could be in your journal, it could be on the notes app on your phone. But that list could consist of things like, oh, I need to be perfect, or I'm unworthy of having my desired reality. And then you want to allocate time to meditate on one of these aspects that is causing you resistance. And so you want to pick one aspect that is causing you resistance. And then in this meditation, you want to lean into feeling the resistance. Allow the thoughts, allow the emotion to come up and lean into that sensation in your body until it finishes its cycle. So for example, let's say you picked the feeling of the need to be perfect, right? Maybe you noted that down when you were about to record a video and you were stressing because you're like, oh no, how am I going to look on camera? How am I going to talk on camera? And then maybe that caused you to procrastinate doing it. You kept putting it off day after day. Or you did it, but you were anxious and you felt stressed the whole time you did it and you just crashed after. And then what you want to do next is to visualize that scene that triggered the resistance and then lean into the feeling of that resistance. Like lean into the feeling of needing to be perfect and lean into it until the emotion comes up and then just finishes its cycle. And you'll know once it's finished its cycle because during it, you're going to feel this contraction in your body, right? You're going to feel this tense energy both in your mind and your body. And then once it's completed its cycle, you're going to start to yawn. You might start to like shake it off, right? You know how dogs just randomly shake? It's like they're shaking off this anxious energy that they've been holding. And you're going to notice that your mind starts to quieten down and that your body starts to soften. And then you feel this new level of calmness that you haven't really felt before. And then you'll know once you've fully released it, when you try to lean back into the sensation, you try to lean back into the resistance, but you can't even find it in your consciousness anymore because it's no longer there. And because it's no longer in your state of consciousness anymore, the next time you go to do that thing, the next time you go to record that video, you're not going to feel that same feeling of needing to be perfect because it's not running within you anymore. It's not stuck. And so when you go to record that video, you feel like you're doing it as your desired self. You're not feeling that same resistance. Unless there's a new layer of resistance that pops up as you do it and you're like, this one is different. Then you're going to go and note that one down. But each time you feel like you've fully let go of an aspect that is causing you resistance, then you want to cross it off your list and you want to pick the next layer of resistance that you feel is causing you the most resistance, that is blocking you the most, right? And then work on that. Follow the same method. And so as you do this method of letting go, it's almost like you're unlocking a new skill tree in your character, right? It feels like when you work on a layer of resistance, you're just doing the mission that you need to complete to get to the next level. And then when you get to the next level, the next layer of resistance reveals itself and then you work on that mission, you complete that mission, then you jump up to the next level. So all of a sudden, you find yourself going from level 1 to level 5, level 10, and then all of a sudden at level 99, where you don't feel any resistance anymore. You've just permanently shifted into your desired state. So instead of trying to force yourself to shift into your desired state with all the resistance in the way, with all those 98 levels between you, you just let go, complete the mission on each level, and then stay at that level easily, right? So that's what you're doing with this method. And then when you do this method, your reality begins to change, both in how you experience your reality and how easily you manifest and materialize in your reality. And this is all possible when you understand yourself as the player, as the awareness, rather than the ego, rather than the character, because you understand your true nature as the creator of your reality. And so despite what physical reality is showing you, despite how many circumstances you may have in your reality that most people would look at as negative, you have conscious control of yourself and how you experience your reality. And so because the ego is no longer blocking you from experiencing it the way you want to feel, it is no longer blocking your manifestation. And your experience of this life changes now from this moment, Not when your desired reality comes. It starts to change now. How you feel about yourself changes now. How you feel about your reality changes now. And then what happens is your desired reality just manifests and materializes easily, just as a byproduct of who you have now become. So if you're interested in learning more of this and you want to dive deeper into manifestation and reality creation to be able to create your desired reality through alignment and not force, you can join my members and my clients in my private community, Reality Benders. The link is in the description. If you join that community, you'll be able to work with me much more closely than on my YouTube, because you can reach out to me one-on-one in the DMs. I also hop on Zoom calls with people just spontaneously. But if you're happy to just keep watching these YouTube videos, you're still going to get very valuable information from them. So whichever option you choose, it's going to be very effective for you either way. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one.